a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Australia's best independent news and opinion radio show, The Daily Australian, with Nicola Charles and Jason Olbourne.
Hello and welcome to episode 119 of The Daily Australian for Wednesday, June the 25th. And let me just say, it is not just us anymore saying that we are Australia's best show. I noticed that Simon shared one of our shows yesterday and said not only is it Australia's best, but it's the best worldwide. Thanks, Simon, for that encouragement. What a terrific way to be able to see how your show is being shared. Nicola Charles, happy hump day. And how about that for some high praise?
Yeah, happy hump day, everyone. A couple of days closer to the weekend, I guess. We're getting lots of high praise from those people who can actually see us online. But I shared a video that I made this morning because I was on my laptop and I thought, I haven't reposted that, to give it a little nudge. So I tried to repost it and it said, Soz, you can't repost that. That post's been deleted. And I thought, I wonder how many of our fans try and repost us. And the reason the reposts look low is because they get told, it's been deleted. Absolutely awful.
Let me play a clip.
Yep. That little blue box is saying, sorry, you can't retweet that. That post's been deleted. What's going on, Jason? We're very effective. We're making a difference. So they shut us up.
That's extraordinary. I had a situation back on the Zuckerberg digital rag where I recorded clicking on the like button and the numbers went up and then they went back to zero. And I recorded it over and over again, same thing. So don't tell me that it's not manipulated. It's unreal. Well, the best way to avoid social media interaction or interference, I should say, perhaps is to, one is have your own website, and the other one would be to join our Substack page. And right there, you know that everything is there in full. It doesn't get interrupted. And one of the ways of doing that, and it's quite interesting, is that as you are a paid subscriber, it must be known that Substack obviously takes a small percentage as well as a fee for handling, etc. But that makes them an economic partner of the Daily Australian, and therefore there is an incentive to leave us alone. And therefore, one of the things about that is that you can enjoy 20% off the annual plan, our best seller, reduced from $75 to $60 until June 30. And all you need to do is join at thedailyaustralian.substack.com. And we are very, very grateful for those that are choosing to take part. And the thing was that we didn't want to make any sort of promises in the early days as we're concentrating on building the best possible show. But Nicola, you've got a new announcement that you might like to let everyone know.
Yeah, first off, let me say that I realized in the middle of everything that we've just lived through for the last 5 years that being 100% benevolent and doing everything for free doesn't work. You may not have your freedom of speech if you do everything for free. When I got deplatformed from Instagram and YouTube and then Spotify. And so I sat in this studio, this office, racking my brain thinking, this world is completely messed up. How can I win in this awful new world of commerce? So I decided to monetize myself. And that's when I first hit Patreon. And I've never had any problems over there. So we know that it does work. So I'm glad, we weren't sure, but I'm really glad you guys are jumping on the Substack subscription, because Substack actually has been pretty amazing as a platform. I'm surprised. I first learned about it a couple of years ago when Tucker Carlson started raving about Substack. But because so many of you have sort of honored this journey that we're undertaking to discuss what we're being told is truth in the media, I thought it might be good a couple of times a week, maybe early in the week and then on a Friday, so you'd have it for the weekend, of doing extra bits, which we will call TDA Unchained. So this will be 20 minutes to half an hour of completely unchecked, uncensored discussion, perhaps about what's gone on that week or that weekend. This will be completely off leash. This will be Jason and I giving our absolute raw opinions on everything that's going on. I can't promise that there won't be profanity in TDA Unchained. There may be. And that Unchained, a couple of episodes a week, will be available to those who subscribe. So it wasn't in vain. You're going to get a little bit extra. So thank you.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to taking the gloves off, and I wonder if we're going to get, a little bit public in some of our disagreement there, just the same, or whether or not we actually agree when we do take the gloves off and arrive at, necessary conclusions. So thanks everyone for being a part of the Daily Australian Substack page, and of course that makes you one of our Daily Australians. Now, there is a lot to talk about in today's show, and I think that I would like to start with a particular character that has arrived on our shores from the land of the free, home of the brave, where they have free speech, and has decided that it's no longer relevant in this country, and that she is going to be the one-person band that is going to protect our children online. And yesterday, Julie Inman-Grant spoke at the National Press Club, and in an extraordinary scenario. I'll put this one on the screen for you now. So this is a snapshot that I took at the conclusion of her speech. So the ABC, on their YouTube page, with 2.38 million subscribers, had a grand total of 133 people watching. How about that on the government taxpayer dime? And 8 likes. And notably, the comments were turned off.
Oh, come on. CCP tactics or what?
Right. So you couldn't say anything about this particular person. So
how ironic. You're not allowed to talk about her and she's strangling freedom of speech.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Now, I wanted to make a couple of comparisons, which I think are really important here. So we'll start with this first graphic. So the Australian government hypocrisy exposed, part 1. So 1, this is perfectly okay. This is the Australian government, Australian classification for films. And you'll see there on the bottom left, mature M rated. The content is moderate in impact. Films and computer games classified M are not recommended for children under the age of 15. They have content such as violence and themes that require a mature outlook. Children under the age of 15 may legally access this content. Parents and guardians may need to find out more about the content in a film or computer game before deciding whether it is suitable for a child in their care. And on the other side of the page, well, that is an app made just for kids called YouTube Kids. It appears to have programs there for infants. And if you look closely, here's what it says. YouTube Kids was created to give kids a more contained environment that makes it simpler and more fun for them to explore, and easier for parents and caregivers to guide their journey as they discover new and exciting interests along the way. But Julie Inman-Grant has decided that YouTube will be banned for children under the age of 16. So whilst the government says that parents are allowed to determine if their kids can watch an M-rated film, Julie Inman-Grant has become your mother, kids, when it comes to what you can consume on YouTube, such as Blippi or Ryan's Toy Review. So those people that are unwrapping toys for you, that's considered dangerous. And of course, it's to protect the innocent. It's amazing. There it is again. For your safety and convenience, using lowest common denominator politics. And because one person is bullied, well, that means that we all have to sit down in class and write lines like we were told as kids, this all-inclusive communist-style policy, Nicola. She is the greatest hoax that ever walked the face of the earth, and we're going to get into some of her bio in a minute, and then we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty. But what did you think about this particular character?
Well, dare I give my hypothesis, but I actually think this is related to what I said earlier about monetizing our voices to gain your freedom of speech. So, what we see there is that Hollywood and Hollywood movies allow parents to parent and decide what's appropriate for their children. That's what they're telling us. We all know that children watch movies that aren't age appropriate, and the parents likely have no idea that they're doing it. They go on about parental controls, but I don't think many people use them. Now, it is an actual fact that one of the largest, if not the largest, investor, funder, profiteer from Hollywood is, of course, BlackRock. Right. So it's very much like these platforms that you monetize to keep your freedom of speech, because Hollywood is so massively monetized. Then the rules are a little bit softer. Now, with YouTube and YouTube Kids, because kids aren't able to monetize their watching of YouTube, as in they don't have a credit card, so they can't hit subscribe, then that's going to be whipped away. It's almost like we're moving into a world. In fact, we are moving into a world where you will be able to pay for freedoms, including freedom of speech, if someone else is profiting from it. You will be able to pay for freedom of viewing. You will be able to pay for the freedom to drive an internal combustion engine. You will be able to pay carbon offsets to run a business or go on an overseas holiday. So it's literally the monetizing of everything, really, the experience of living. And they're selling it to us as care for children. Now, we know this government in particular doesn't care for children. And so I'm embarrassed for her. And I'm not surprised that only 133 people checked in. And I would hazard a guess, in a very massively monetized and corporate organization like the Labour Party, most of those 133 would be her staff and people who are at the ABC. So that was a really good catch by you, that no one was watching. And it was very reminiscent of when Biden used to do lives on YouTube as well, and he got about the same viewers as well.
Yeah, unreal. It's just extraordinary that she gets. So we're going to play a clip in a moment of an interesting reaction question that they asked her about returning to the United States.
Yes.
In the meantime, Tom Connell brought up the fact that 28% of Australians are using a VPN, and they will be able to get around said restrictions here if your kids wanted to watch YouTube. But of course, if such a ridiculous ban, most mums and dads who are told by the government that it's up to them to make a decision about whether their kids can watch an M-rated movie, well, then they'll be able to make the same consideration. Say, kids, don't worry, just use mum or dad's YouTube account. And sometimes you don't even need to have a YouTube account to actually watch YouTube, of course. And you can watch G and PG rated content. But of course, anything on YouTube Kids has to be rated G. And so there was a situation there a couple of years ago where people were sneaking in some bad content, and that, of course, was taken down. And we all know that YouTube is very good at taking down content. So it just seems that it is one of those hypocrisies. Well, let's continue with part 2 of the hypocrisy. Take a look at this graphic. So this is the Australian Primary Healthcare Nurses Association. That's the top screen with a fellow with the glasses on there. And the next line underneath says, how to respond when a young person aged 12 to 17 years requests a COVID-19 vaccine. So hang on a second. A 16-year-old, 15-year-old kid can't watch YouTube Kids, but in the same country, a 12-year-old can request a COVID-19 jab. So on the left where the black arrow is, I've highlighted that for you in yellow, and it says vaccination for COVID-19 has been proven safe and effective from the age of 6 months and is recommended by the Australian Technical Advisory Group on Immunisation. And I took that screenshot today. And then up the top, I've written, mature minors aged 12, year 7, are allowed to make lifelong decisions about taking experimental drugs, according to what you see on the left. And yet on the 3rd of June, so that is 3 weeks and 1 day ago, and accordingly the APNA still haven't updated their website, healthy infants, children and adolescents aged 18 years are not recommended to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. I would like to know, Nicola, how do you think that a mature minor was able to make a decision about their future without thinking about impulse in the moment and reacting to things such as peer pressure, when it was all about that to save Nana and school and how dare you and left-wing ideology in the school system, take the jab and you'll be one of us type of thing. And no one gave consideration to what we already knew back then were the side effects. And as you could see in the letters that I have put up on this on this show that I wrote to the Myocarditis Foundation, made public many years ago, they knew back then that this thing caused myocarditis in young people, and yet mature minors were persuaded and given false information, as we saw there, that the COVID-19 jabs were safe and effective.
Well, just to clarify, it's 18 years and under, so it's all kids. And of course, they can't make those decisions, and they shouldn't be expected to make those decisions. And it is child abuse to even conceive of the fact that they would be able to make those decisions. Now, the people pushing these shots to children, even before the statement that they are not recommended for under 18s, are in actual fact state-sponsored drug pushers. I mean, that's what they are. So before I decided to homeschool my teenagers during the pandemic in the last year in high school, I pulled them out for a couple of reasons. One included a teacher holding a class where at the head of the class, she said to my then, I think she was 14-year-old daughter, Donald Trump has got COVID. Let's all hope and cheer that he dies. And I had to write a letter of complaint to the school on that. But the final straw was when there was a van that I have never seen before, nice, new, shiny Mercedes-Benz van that had been converted into a pizza slice delivery van. And it was parked outside the high school, and it waited until school turned out. And it was offering the teenagers a giant American pizza slice if they injected mRNA. And of course, kids not knowing the difference between right and wrong, that's why they're children until they turn 18 years of age, went and did this and now are in horrible regret. I know some of those kids, including in particular the young males, and some of them have been through some really disturbing health concerns. And now they're a few years older, they're worried about their fertility prospects for the future. Drug pushers hang around outside schools in vans. Would you like a sweetie little girl? Would you like a slice of pizza? All you have to do is inject this untested drug. It was absolutely appalling. The world that I lived in the past, these people would be arrested for what they were doing. And this state, Victoria, allowed it to happen unchecked. It's appalling.
If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it is a duck. If you are abusing children and taking advantage of their ignorance to peddle something and pretend it is in their own interests, if you're out there persuading and coercing and providing unparalleled forms of incentive like a slice of pizza to inject a drug, you are, for every intents purposes, a drug dealer, a criminal, somebody who should be locked up. If you are then masquerading today and pretending that you are now representing the safety whilst saying that it's okay to watch a film and send your kids in, they're allowed to do it, but they can't watch YouTube Kids, you are the ultimate hypocrite. And the two do not line up. And the only reason that these people are getting away with it, and seemingly we thought that the Great Awakening meant that we wouldn't tolerate it anymore, is because the powers of censorship are so powerful here in this country, from the point of view that we saw Chris Minns in the New South Wales Parliament reject. His people didn't even turn up to an inquiry by an upper house member, Rod Roberts, is simply extraordinary to think that this is the arrogance that these people exhibit. I don't know in Australia how it is that we've become so weak that we are unable to make protest, like the process of letter writing, the protest, being able to simply protest or peacefully demonstrate, of course, doesn't seem to have a whole lot of interest. But I will say this, that years ago when I was a teenager, my uncle was working in a state Labor Party in Tasmania, and he made the off-the-cuff comment that when a particular member of Parliament receives 4 or 5 inquiries on the same subject in a day, they go into meltdown. and they don't know what to do and they have to react. And that's all it takes. So if we extrapolate that to today, it may only be 6 or 7 inquiries made to one MP on a given day, and make sure that they're genuine. You don't want to be a pest, but there are plenty of genuine inquiries that we can make. So therefore, the concept of being able to organise is crucial in making sorts of progress. So we don't have to organise 10,000 people to a rally and march around and you just get ignored and pushed away. But a constructive letter or a phone call to a member's office will get the attention of the member, and then it goes up the chain to the minister, and then the minister goes into a cabinet meeting, and this pressure means that there is reaction. Now, on Friday, we're going to have Michael Olbourne on the show, who works for Senator Ralph Babet, and we will put some of this inquiry to Michael, because Michael, of course, seemingly working for someone on our side of the fence. But I want to know how he deals with it inside the parliament, when effectively his little office is kind of like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. They're up against both sides of the mainstream parliament. But we've got plenty of questions that we'll ask him.
And now we've got this. Was he the Victorian health minister? During the pandemic, he's starting up some trust
Chief Health
initiative.
Officer.
Chief Health Officer, yeah. And he's setting up a Trust in Science initiative. I mean, this is extraordinary. That's it. Brett Sutton. I was just looking at my phone trying to remember his name. I mean, why on earth would anyone trust anything he has to say when it was proven that the advice he was giving wasn't actually based in science? I mean, do you think these people realize how laughable they are? They're still peddling this rubbish, Jason.
I find it just it's almost impossible to stomach now. This abuse of power, this hubris, to believe that we are so stupid that we have permanent amnesia, and that these people who don't even hold positions of authority anymore are still coming back and trying to say that they do. I feel queasy when I watch Channel 9 News, which I feel queasy most of the time anyway. But when they wheel out Anastasia Palaszczuk, for goodness sake, the former premier, like, buzz off, get out of our lives, and don't think you're going to come back and collect your $400 appearance fee for 3 minutes on the Today Show, you peasant. Like, take your pension, take your cushy new ridiculous job that you've got, and get out of our sight. Or maybe you're doing it because you're reminding us constantly of the disgraceful period in history where these politicians literally ran rampant over us. And of course, most of them don't have a single clue about what is going on. Now, we've got a couple more health stories, and then we're going to change to my other favorite subject, climate change. We want to get into that a little bit more, about more hypocrisy that's going on. But I just wanted to bring this up to you. This is in today's Murdoch rag. Critical implications for public health after 20 new bat viruses have been found in good old China. Medical experts have warned that the discovery of the viruses could have critical implications for public health around the globe. Well, of course it does, because that's exactly what the whole WHO, IPA, and all that stuff was all about. International health regulations, etc., IHR, was about the collection of new bat viruses. So they literally are legalizing the concept of bioweaponry. We will collect it all up, then we'll synthesize it, then we'll kind of get away with, whichever country can get away with the idea of gain of function, and then accidentally it'll all get let out. But it's okay, because we've got the mRNA jabs in the background, and we've got that creep over at Moderna, Stefan Bancel, and that other imbecile at Pfizer, Albert Bourla, and all the usual suspects who get their little hand in the cookie jar and collecting the profits, and will keep injecting you on and on and on it goes. It's sickening to think that this is what's happening. But I just, again, I think we are watching. It is literally government becoming organised criminals.
Absolutely, because These bat viruses were likely found in petri dishes because, it says in the NHS documents obtained by Judicial Watch in America that they were working on mutant diseases, right? So these are not scrapings from the wall of a bat cave. And even if they were, human beings don't live in bat caves, so there wouldn't be a threat unless you went in and got them and brought them into our labs. But this is all part of what this New World Order, this reset, are planning on doing. And this is what the whole World Health Organization Amendment and the IHR refers to. And this was the part that wasn't actually settled before Australia signed up for it, which is the inventory of all these diseases. And apparently, once you sign up to it, so the Australian government has, you take all of your lethal diseases from your labs that you've ever worked on or had in your own stores, and you send them over to the World Health Organization and Mr. Bill Gates, and they decide. So I think these are the pieces being put in place of what they're not putting into words, but what feels like, the final solution. Because we've now got, as we've spoken about before on the show, a world of immunocompromised people. So I think the whole reason for the injection rollout was that if we had been a world, a globe of billions of people who had intact immune systems, this giant plan to depopulate would not have worked at all, right? It might have made a dent, but it wouldn't have seen the kind of population numbers drop that we're even seeing now on the UN websites. So what they had to do was hobble people first. And this is what they do in wars. This is what they did in Vietnam. They dropped Agent Orange to make people sick before they put boots on the ground. They went in with weather wars and they created typhoons to wash away all the rice fields so they didn't have anything to eat. And then they put boots on the ground. So what the pandemic was actually was stage one of their military countermeasure against us. And it's actually been listed in Pfizer documents during the Pfizer whistleblower case that this was listed as an actual military countermeasure. And I did a quick Substack last night. I was thinking as I went to bed, what's really creepy for me is this isn't turning up and gassing everyone and it's quick. This isn't dropping bombs and stuff like that. These people seem to be enjoying the process, the sadistic process. By putting up these pictures, you've actually got another one there that's just someone's put so much time into it. It's quite creepy. They look like trees. This sadistic process of making people absolutely terrified of what's coming, ruling the globe with fear because fear makes people comply. But the side that gives me the creeps the most is that these people have put so much time and energy into the artwork, the commercials. Think about that commercial at the beginning of the pandemic, Jason, where that young woman, quite young, was gasping, absolutely gasping for air. Because she couldn't breathe because she was on sort of a respirator. And this is what they've wanted to do. They've wanted to watch us fear this. They've wanted to watch us run for the remedy. Then they've wanted to watch us die off from the remedy. And it's this sort of what I call a hands-free approach to genocide. What they've dreamt about for a long time, since the days when they used to crucify us. Why did they crucify people back then? Because they nailed them to the wood. They lifted them up high so that people that might be empathetic to those being crucified couldn't bring them water, couldn't clean their wounds, couldn't feed them, couldn't help them in any way. But it was also so that the people being crucified could feel and be very aware of death creeping ever closer. And that's a very similar situation to what they've put people in now who were very concerned about the ingredients in these injections. So I find the whole thing incredibly dark and sadistic. It's this hands-free method of genocide. They've been found out. The world is aware. And that's why, again, it's all linked. Someone like Julian Grant has to rock up because they're terrified that, okay, all the adults are awake, but we must make sure the children are not awake. Now, if they're allowed to still watch Hollywood movies, which in themselves are propaganda, that's probably not going to wake the children up. But if they watch YouTube or Substack, this show on Rumble, for instance, then they might start to question and think critically, and that's something they just can't have.
Maybe that's the reason why we don't get the repost. But interestingly, Julie Inman Grant has worked for Twitter in the past. I'll give you a little bit more detail about her. It says here from Wikipedia, American-born Australian public servant who is currently serving as the E-Safety Commissioner, the only E-Safety Commissioner on planet Earth. After graduating from university, Grant was offered a position as case agent with the CIA, but declined the offer as it meant I wouldn't be able to tell my friends and family what I was doing. And subsequently started working in the public sector, thank you, as the public policy advisor for United States Congressman John Miller back in the early 90s. Then she worked for Microsoft, and then she became head of corporate affairs at Microsoft, and then she went to work for Twitter. And of course, here she is, the darling of the World Economic Forum. She's right there, front and center, because that's what you want. You don't get a better globalist than Julie Inman Grant, the E-Safety Commissioner. She was reappointed to a further 5-year term by the Australian government in 2027. So her job technically expires in 2027. She was appointed there in 2022.
Okay, who appointed her? That's my question. Because if you've got on your resume WEF, Microsoft, Twitter, and then the Australian government, that is a very concerning career path to me. Who created that pathway to her to be able to come in and preach as an unelected official to Australians about what they're going to expose their child's brains to? We know they don't care about children's brains because they put fluoride and other nasty chemicals in tap water. Right. So and this dumbs down the population. This lowers IQs. We know they do not care about that kind of thing. So, they're protecting themselves. It's all like a crime scene cover up, Jason. I've said that so many times. Everything they do feels like a crime scene cover up. I don't think they expected to be found out as widespread as it is. I don't think they thought the waking up would happen. And if it did happen, it wouldn't happen this quickly. And so now they're thinking, shit, at least let's try and keep the younger generations dumbed down. And then we'll just have to do the 2-step and jump from one foot to the next until they're the next generation.
Yeah, for sure. Now, here she is yesterday answering a question about whether or not she would be allowed back into the US.
So I actually see what we're doing as protecting Australian voices online, because it is those who are most vulnerable that tend to be targeted online, and we don't take action unless there is an Australian on the other end that's experiencing hurt and harm at a considerable level.
So no concern if you were to enter the US?
I'm not planning on going to the US anytime soon. I'll defer to my DFAT colleagues to see whether or not they see risks.
Yeah, you go to your DFAT colleagues and you see if you can, get around Trump's desire to encourage people to keep freedom of speech. You've got important friends, so it's fine. We don't have important friends. We've got you. You've been installed. And notice there that she was talking to young people, predominantly young people who, good on them, they've got questions, right? But they won't talk to people of our age group. They would never come on shows like this. They know that we're too smart. It's like target remains. You failed. You injected a lot of us. You poisoned the water of a lot of us. You're dropping God knows what from the skies on most of us, but target remains, right? We've still got these questions and they're not being answered, and they're not likely to be answered. We've got a Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, and I think we've got a clip from The Guardian, Jason, who, when he took his oath in 2022, and his oath recently was very different, but his oath in 2022 was not the oath to become Prime Minister, Jason. And yet everyone was taking their orders, their instructions from this guy.
Your Excellency, I present the Honourable Anthony Albanese to be sworn in to the office of Prime Minister.
Mr Albanese, I invite you to take and subscribe to the affirmation of office of the Prime Minister of Australia.
I, Anthony Norman Albanese, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will well and truly serve the Commonwealth of Australia, her land and her people in the office of Prime Minister.
Clap him for not taking the oath. So that's the incorrect oath. So he said, I affirm and declare, right? So that's not the oath. The correct oath, you can say it two ways, is I, whoever, do swear, not affirm and declare. I, Anthony Albanese, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors, according to law, so help me God. Or I, Anthony Albanese, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors, according to the law. Neither of those acceptable oaths were sworn. So for that period from 2022 until the recent federal election in Australia, Anthony Albanese, as I stated multiple times in public speeches, was the Prime Minister of nowhere. And look, when he was off leash, what he did to this great nation.
So you wonder when you handed that card to, when the Governor General handed that card to Albanese, where he gets the card from for him to read from. So the Governor General, as the King's representative or the Queen's representative, is also in error in that circumstance. And so they've broken ranks with what they're supposed to do. And I posted that picture there that came from the government website today, and it still reads the Queen. They haven't even updated it themselves. So what is really going on at this point?
Well, he can't swear the correct oath, Jason, because then if he did some of the things he's done, even basic commercial decisions like selling Australia's gas overseas and then denying Australians a gas supply. We just found out in Sydney City and also in Victoria that in Victoria, that I've actually shared it on my X account, Jacinta Allen, again, the Premier of nowhere, she wasn't voted for by anyone. She is saying that if you're an owner-occupier, in other words, if you've got enough money to own your home, and we know most people can't even find a rental property right now, you can have a gas water heater, but if you're a renter, you cannot. And she's spinning it the whole 180 going, we're going to take care of people because bills are too high. Yeah, you're the reason bills are too high. So even on that small level of selling Australia's gas and coal overseas to China and then denying use of it to Australians, that is treason. But absolutely the health stuff that went on, as we now know with Brett Sutton, without real scientific advice, and Dan Andrews, that is treason. And treason, if you've taken the correct oath, is punishable by death. So that's why it would be not in the King's name or the Queen's name at the time, would not be sworn in to do this much evil and this much harm and rape this country of all of her resources in the monarch's name. So that's why they don't swear the correct oath, because later on that can have dire ramifications for a Prime Minister.
At what point are we meant to get accountability at this level once again? And how do you even address it when you get something that seems to be so obvious and yet so extreme?
Well, you talk about it. We're doing that, Jason. We're doing that. Not many people are talking about it.
And again, it's the process of getting action, right? In situations like this, and there is no level playing field. If anything, it's entirely unlevel. But who has the voices and who screams the loudest? What is practical and what is not practical in those circumstances? very, very frustrating and very sad that we have to sit here and take it and not know where to go next. So we'll ask more questions of Michael and other politicians as we get them onto the show, whether or not that's going to be far enough, but we will certainly take the actions. Now, when it comes to all of this health talk, isn't it ironic that the same people that are telling you to inject for your health and safety are also supporting the other idea of end of life? And this is another story. A suicide pod will be ready to use in the UK, according to Dr. Philip Nitschke, an Australian, who is hoping that doctors will embrace his sarcopod created with a 3D printer when the assisted dying bill becomes law. And of course, we do know that the other fellow who actually himself took his own life, who was involved with the suicide pods only recently, and it was because there was an allegation that he had to actually. It didn't work in these circumstances, and of course the ramification was that the particular doctor had to was then questioned on how he was somehow involved in the ending of this person's life. A horrific story, but we saw, of course, in Canada where Justin Trudeau was pushing the jab as hard as he possibly could, and yet in the same country, they had the highest levels of assisted dying, and people were allowed to take their own lives over depression, for goodness sake. Young people were told that there was no hope, poverty, etc. And how is it that we have devalued life so much in that regard? We devalue life when it comes to crimes committed against, people native to this country by people who are imported to the country, but that's overlooked. But when it comes to pushing said jab for safety, they are so obsessed to the point that they want to exclude you from society if you don't. So it doesn't add up. It's one of these hypocrisies yet again, and that's the point. That's where it's pointed out.
It's very reminiscent of, Nazi Germany. I don't throw around that word lightly, because it's targeting the poor, it's targeting the disabled, it's targeting the depressed. There was a woman in Canada when I first became aware of all this, and she'd actually been injured by the jabs, and it had meant that she was going to spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. She didn't want to leave her own home. And she was capable of living inside her own home if she could get a ramp up to her front door. And the ramp cost about 100,000 Canadians. So she applied for a grant to the Canadian government. And instead of approving her grant, they offered her assisted dying. Now, so much of this is hypocrisy, right? It was like Keir Starmer in the UK saying, you've got to inject to save Granny. And then as soon as everyone injected to save Granny, he cut the winter fuel allowance for old age pensioners, meaning they'd probably freeze to death, because it's pretty chilly in Victoria in Australia right now. We're in the middle of winter, but it's nothing to how cold it gets in the UK. So if we were so keen on saving Granny, why would he have done that afterwards? You're absolutely right that the value of human life has gone. All of these people that claim to be philanthropists and humanitarians, and the same people who claim to be environmentalists while destroying the environment and becoming eco-terrorists. It's the 180 rule. Whatever they tell you they're doing, the opposite is probably likely the case, which is a little terrifying. I do feel that we are now being hunted. Bill Gates often talked about these death panels, where there needed to be a panel of people, which I believe is now the World Health Organization, that has been set up to decide, why would we spend $250,000 saving your 80-year-old granny with an operation when really and truly she'll only get another 5 or 6 years? It's not worth the financial outlay. That's what Bill Gates was talking about. And he said no one wants to have this uncomfortable discussion about death panels. Well, globally, they've created a death panel, right? Because the whole COVID scam was an IQ test. And now the decisions people are going to make, jabbed and unjabbed, their ability to survive financially or not, all of this is going to contribute as to whether they might be offered a little trip in their own suicide pod, which is devastating. I thought we had suicide hotlines and suicide prevention. And when I used to do broadcasting ethics on radio in Melbourne, you weren't even allowed to say the word suicide in case you tipped someone over the edge. Now we're talking about it in the Times newspaper, and it's right around the corner as an option for you.
Well, as we round out the health part of the show, a reminder here that back in September of 2021, members of Congress and their staff are exempt from Biden's vaccine mandate. I mean, how much hypocrisy can you possibly share? It's just absolutely devastating. Well, to go from one hypocrisy to another, a couple of graphics to share with you now. This is an event for schools. Climate Courage Schools is a new campaign from the Climate Majority Project calling for education that puts emotional well-being at the heart of how we teach young people about and prepare them for a climate destabilized world. 1, leadership, put climate understanding, emotional insight, nature connection, and the whole school action in every head teacher's brief. Culture, train all teaching staff to navigate climate distress, and foster connection. Action, gives schools protected time to co-create real-world adaptation projects with students, and 4, curriculum, prioritise and incentivise emotionally aware climate learning in every single subject. It's no surprise that anxiety, despair, and disengagement are on the rise, yet our schools still teach for a world of stability and linear careers. How about that for indoctrination?
One word in there jumped out. Did you see it? One word. Incentivize. They're going to incentivize them to believe the lies. You'll get better grades. You'll get a credit on your grades. You will be a special person if you believe the lies. This is absolutely dystopian what's being done to our children. You know, couple that with the pizza van outside with your mRNA and don't tell me it's not going on, Jason. Don't tell me.
No, well, exactly. Now, I'll make a couple of, observations. I was at an event last night, and it just so happened that people were asking me who aren't aware of my work, about my show, and they wanted to start watching, and hello to all the new people that are coming in. So I gave them all my social media sites, etc., and we got onto the subject of health and vaccines. So there were two gents opposite each other coming together, friends. And one was pro the jab, and one was saying, no longer will I take said flu jabs, etc., because I don't believe in them anymore, and also because I know a young person that got permanent heart damage as a result. And the other person said, well, maybe not, and etc. And then we got onto the subject of information, and then he asked me where I got my information from. And I said, I'll give you a statistic that no Australian female under the age of 50 died from COVID before the jab. And that's when he asked me where I got it from. I said, well, the Australian government website and the New South Wales government website. So that's a pretty good source. So there was no argument. But then he then said along the lines of, well, I'm going to ask my friend at the TGA, and he was involved in pharmaceuticals. I said, well, go for it. I said, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise you that. I'm going to tell you what I heard when I spoke to Dr. Philip Altman on many occasions that I interviewed him in the past. And on one particular occasion, which I have on record, I said to Philip, what is your opinion now of the COVID jab? And his response at the time was, not only would I never take another COVID jab, I would never take another jab of any kind ever again. And for the record, Dr. Philip Altman was in charge of vaccine trials for the TGA. So you don't get better or closer to the horse's mouth than Dr. Philip Olbourne. So with that, guess what? These people are interested in watching what's going on. So, that means that
they
all
need
the hard...
to be. This isn't an option anymore. If you don't wise up and find out what's really going on, because you're being led astray. Right, you're being led astray. This is this is the big bad wolf in Red Riding Hood pretending to be Granny. This is sitting in bed dressed up as you. We are living through the most terrifying real life fairy tale ever perpetrated on humanity. This is a hands-free genocide where these smiling assassins lure you in, lure your children in. And they want to force them to believe the lies, to kick them off YouTube, to make it illegal for them not to go to school, to punish you as parents. It is so creepy and dystopian. And I understand, Jason, people's desire to want to say to themselves, nope, I'm not going to believe that. I've always liked my government. I did before too. I don't believe that they'd ever do that. I understand the incentive to do that. But as they can clearly see, we're all losing people. We're all getting sick. The messaging in the media is now beyond creepy. As you showed earlier, those pictures of what's coming, those now tree spike proteins. My God, they've put a lot of time and money into this. And that's why they won't let it slide. That's why they're doubling down. That's why they keep coming for us. It's the investment in it as well as the end goal that they won't give up on.
Well, I just want to make another observation, and I wanted to say this, that all of the hard work that we have done over the years to be able to just simply come from, literally from our own homes, questioning and realizing that there was a gap in the market and wanting to put information out there using the resources that were available. And so we got better at what we did, and we've put in the hard yards, and we were able to actually work in places that we could get interviews with people like Dr. Philip Olbourne. Because I'll tell you what, 5 years ago, I couldn't even ring up my local GP. I wouldn't even get his phone number. But now, of course, I've got to the stage that I have a phone that's got hundreds of doctors' phone numbers in there, and I can reach out and send text messages. And doctors actually call me on occasion to have a chat and to tell me about certain things, and so do lawyers, etc. So this is part of becoming a professional. So park that where it is. And what I want to say is this is why I'm adamant that we need to raise our standards, and we need to be able to become better than the people that we wish to compete against. This is a headline from yesterday. I didn't bring it up, but I think it's appropriate to bring it up now. This is in the Murdoch Rag. This is a story from June 23rd. Now watch this. Serious harm. Cooker podcaster hit with defamation trial. There's been a major update on an Australian conspiracy theorist who allegedly falsely accused a religious order member of drinking human blood. Okay, so this is interesting,
Who's the podcaster?
right?
Who was that?
So here we go now. This is, there you go, David Graham, also known as Guru, made a series of statements about David Bottrell, an Australian man who is part of the Ordo Templi Orientis in Australia. And the claims were made during 3 podcasts live streamed on X. So,
Well, what's happening? They're taking him to court for defamation.
So the judges approved that it can go to court for a defamation hearing. Now, of course, it will probably turn out that Guru hasn't got a whole lot of assets that they can sue him for anyway. It'll be a civil situation. But the point again is this is why I keep talking about it. And probably the reason why I haven't released certain interviews that I've done, not because I'm trying to hold something back or hide something, but if you're going to get sued for defamation, you kind of want to be able to advance the cause. Like, there's no point just making claims and it going nowhere. So I hope that Guru is able to provide appropriate evidence that suggests that he can do. This is why we have to get better at what we do. Now, I'm not saying, look, I've never met Guru. I've never spoken to Guru. I don't watch his stuff, but I'm aware of who he was. And I just want to say that, and I know that he's been interviewed by people that I know, right? So, but I just think we've got to do better, and it doesn't serve the cause if that is what is used to make a comparison and to bring us down. And
well, you'd want to be careful. You'd want to be really careful getting someone who knows their stuff. Not talking about that particular case specifically. I'm talking about us in the freedom and independent space. You'd want to be really careful doing any kind of public court case, because if people really do understand the Constitution and oaths and the real laws, as I experienced in a magistrate's court last year, you can expose things that, quite frankly, even judges and magistrates don't know, or they've been told to ignore. And so, the outcome can be reasonably shocking. I can't believe that will go to court, because I don't think that would have been discussed unless there was at least testimony and interview or evidence from somebody. So I shall watch on with interest. I'm surprised that's in the mainstream media.
Yeah, well, exactly right. But this is part of it, right? It acts as a hit piece to discredit and to allow the use of the term cooker, which, by the way, the court case is about a particular religious person being offended by something that was said, and the judge acknowledging that the term cooker was offensive as well and a derogatory term. So it's odd. Yeah, so exactly. So look, there's a fight to be had there, but at the same time, if you don't want the grief, that's where you go in those circumstances.
Well, I have a massive I have a massive court case against the ABC in their piece that still sits on YouTube. I mean, I should do something about it. I've been told to. We could probably fund this show for the next 10 years on the defamation lawsuit alone. They call me basically Australia's #1 conspiracy theorist. And it says, among some of the lies she told, that was one of the things it discussed. And it wasn't a lie at all, because what happened straight after the Voice of Parliament referendum is they cancelled everyone's parchment paper title deed and stamped them with destroyed, and gave people digital lot numbers, right? And this was all part of a big UN agenda, which is exactly what I was expressing concern about. But, it's like journalism ended, right? When they all got on board with this, journalism ended, because real journalists go in and they do what we do. They question authority and they question what we're being told is facts. The BBC used to do reports from Ukraine on the neo-Nazis that were sort of setting up, establishment in Ukraine. Of course, that's all gone away now. They didn't want us to know anything about that. So it's almost like journalism is dead. I mean, what are they teaching them when they go to uni now and do a journalism degree, Jason? Are they teaching them to toe the line? That must be what they're teaching them. Never go against your boss. And when these stories, it's like these stories come in from Reuters and the AP, and then they're sort of farmed out to various journalists, because you can see them repeat around the globe, and they just sort of reword it like writers, rewriting a script, and then they tell it in their own particular way. And of course, the general public are fooled, because they don't know that's the same story that arrived in Berlin, in London, in Toronto, in New York. It's just being given to you with an Australian journalist's name under it. Really pretty low ethics going on in journalism in Australia right now.
Well, journalism became an industry of questioning to an industry of PR promotion, and the whole idea of the press release was always an interesting one, when corporations could send out these press releases via email, and they would be picked up and pretty much just reposted by mainstream news agencies. So then, of course, what happened was the next stage that there were less journalists, because people were writing their own journalism, and so these things got thinned out, and of course profit levels dropped, and of course it thinned out some more, and requirements went up and up and up, and off you go. And it seems that the only places where you don't lose staff as such are in government, unless you get a good new leader that wants to cut. And Dutton promised to cut it, and instead the only one that got cut was Dutton. But Campbell Newman, of course, took the sword to the public service. I'll give you an example. We applied for some passports for our family to take a trip, and 2 of them went in on the same day. And one of them we received back, and the other one has been sitting there for a week, longer than the first one. And they're both my kids. And the second one, we got a letter finally that it's finally going to be sent out. And it said, the passport is ready and it will be sent out in the next day, but there is no guarantee that it will be. And in other words, we're only a government department. We are not accountable to anybody, including ourselves, and certainly not to you, who here in Australia pays the highest price for a passport from anywhere in the world. You pay over $400 for a passport in Australia. US, I think you pay under $100 by comparison. But we're not going to provide any form of guarantee or any form of service. We're just merely the government. And I can just imagine this person, literally, you fill out the form online, you send in the information with the photographs that the post office person signs and does all that stuff and approves it, and they literally take it, look at it, stamp it, and send it back out. And there's probably a person sitting there on some grade 6 clerk, whatever, on $110,000 a year. I don't feel like doing that today. Oh, they can wait. Like that, just that horrible, old school, entitled, I'm better than you nonsense because I work in a government department attitude. It stinks to high heaven, and we still put up with this absolute nonsense. I tell you what, the USAID stuff and the exposure over there was absolutely brilliant, if for nothing else, to expose the largesse and the and that whole idea of the fat cats and people getting fat on the system is just absolutely next level, and that eventually will stop. And of course, it happens that the US leads the way there as well.
It might be the whole DEI thing and language barriers and taking longer in the department to get the passports done, because they go to different people, right? Because I had the same thing with my marriage certificate, where I'm on my
Yes.
third one and there's still a mistake on it, but it's okay because it's just my deceased father's name spelling. But originally it was my husband's name spelled incorrectly, his first name, Nick. And then secondly, it was my date of birth that was incorrect. And I didn't even know it until I had to do a police check for a job. And the police check people said, oh, your marriage certificate doesn't tally up with your date of birth on your birth certificate. And I was like, what? And this was like the second marriage certificate that we got. And talking of, DEI hiring and everything, and I do like fairness across the board, I really miss my Aussie posties. I was sitting on the bench at the front of my house, having my organic cigarette, watching the show back, having a nice hot cup of coffee yesterday. And this friendly, very tall African gentleman in a high-vis vest comes walking up my footpath with an Amazon package for one of my daughters. And he was very polite. And, they're always different. It's not like the old days where you get the same postie. But we used to have this Aussie lady, this sort of in her 30s or 40s, very chirpy Aussie lady delivering all the parcels and packages. And I never see any Australians doing any of the deliveries anymore. And I'm like, where are they? Where did they go? What happened? Is this a DEI thing? Are they sick? Are they dead? I mean, we just don't know. But it's just so strange, right? Where are all the Aussies in employment? I know for sure they're not in the people that issue marriage certificates. I can tell you that.
It's quite strange, isn't it? Well, I had a scenario a couple of days ago that I knock on the door, and it was the postie delivering a parcel or a package or something, and my wife answered, and I sort of walked towards the front door, and he said something, and then my wife turned and says, "The postie wants to speak to you." And I thought, "Oh, what's this about?" And he said, "Hello," and he said, "I just wanted to ask you, how come you didn't run this time for the election?" And I thought, isn't that interesting? So he remembers seeing my signs out the front back in the day. So I had a good chat for about 10 minutes and just sort of filled him in on various different things.
See, that's the kind of thing I mean. Do you know what I mean? That kind of community. We don't have that in Melbourne anymore.
Yeah, unreal. Different society altogether, isn't it? Now, I want to hit, as we cross the hour mark, I just want to do a little bit of a coverage on what happened with the ceasefire situation over there in the Middle East.
3-day war. Oh, let's talk about the 3-day war, Jason. That was a good movie, wasn't it?
Well, 12 days, but who's counting? Now, there's a lot that we can sort of uncover about what's going on. And I think the main part of this is that the points I want to make is that optics are everything. And whether or not we believe or not, I had cause to speak to a man from the National Iranian Council, who was a nuclear engineer, and he confirmed with me that Iran does have nuclear facilities, and he explained in great detail, and also and the amount of them as well. So that's quite interesting. But what I find fascinating.
Have you got the clip of Trump swearing later on, Jason? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to play. Yeah, I'm certainly going to play that. And I can actually play it in two versions for you. There's actually another version that's popped up that's even funnier, that will play for you. And it's just, worth having a bit of a chuckle. Maybe we'll play that as the elephant in the room today. But look, CNN comes out, and now they want to claim, after there was apparently a leak from somebody within the White House to say that there wasn't said damage, etc. And yet, so that they're now claiming that Iran can have their nuclear program up and running again in 3 months. So just for a moment, wasn't last week we all saying from the mainstream media that they didn't have a nuclear program, and therefore what are we talking about bombing them for? So how can CNN have a foot in each camp that when it suits them? That's what I can't understand. So I made the point that if there was, and again, optics are everything. So if there was a nuclear program and they've bombed them, and we now arrive at a ceasefire, then there is no nuclear program anymore. At least it's been put back, a certain period of time, maybe 3 months, 10 years, but it seems like a long time. If there wasn't a nuclear program, Therefore, those of the sleeping rest of the world, at least 70% or more, can now sleep calmly knowing that there is no more threat. Now, when people say that Iran will breach the ceasefire and that somehow that the threat is still going to be there, you're talking about Iran after they've been subdued, who have agreed to a ceasefire. Israel's agreed to a ceasefire, even though there's some
Didn't Israel breach
there.
it or threaten to breach it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to play a clip of that in a moment. But do you really think that Iran is going to, the mullahs are going to fire up again and want to take on Trump? Like, it's just it's a preposterous scenario that this will be the case. This is what I find quite crazy. Now, I just want to read off, and I'll play you the clips in a moment. I often refer to Clandestine, a fellow called Jacob Creech, and he wrote today, "My father is a retired army officer. He was EOD, nuclear. Also worked for the Department of Energy, and he still has Q clearance. We talked last night, and he is astonished by what we just witnessed. He said, that's not the way that war works. It was too perfect." And that's what a lot of people are saying. "Not just the kinetic aspect of it, but the information warfare and media misdirection while maintaining the narrative and managing public perception, in addition to judging untold layers of theatre. It was an absolute masterclass in fifth-generation warfare. I don't think most people, myself included, can fully wrap their minds around the amount of planning that went into this entire operation and the amount of variables that had to be accounted for. The airstrikes were, without a doubt, the easiest element of the operation. The hardest part was the information psychological element. The real war was in the media and on social media. The internet was the battlefield." He said that witnessing these past 2 weeks unfold has made him believe that all parties involved in this conflict must have already agreed to a deal behind closed doors, and what we just witnessed was probably a massive scripted theatre, a controlled war. The US, Iran, Israel, and all the superpowers, including Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, and probably more, were almost assuredly in the loop the entire time. There was never a real risk of the US military getting dragged into a ground war, and World War III was never going to happen. Trump had the entire war won before it took place, and the entire operation was secure. The deal was already agreed to. The entire thing was scripted and executed with flawless military precision. Trump had complete control of the situation the entire time, and warfare has advanced into an entire new realm, far beyond comprehension of the public. The entire world just got psyoped, and most of them will never know it.
Well, that's one person's opinion for sure, but I do agree that the whole thing was scripted. I mean, it felt like a movie to me too, and I'm very annoyed this kind of thing is allowed to play out because Americans, thanks to Barack Obama, are no longer protected via legislation about any propaganda that comes their way. But if you're questioning, my God, how intricate were these plans, just look at COVID. Intricate plans are their thing. Intricate plans are what they do, right? Propaganda is what they do. We're all being propagandized. We're not being protected from it. And so look, in the past, why wouldn't we flare up? Why wouldn't we get absolutely terrified and distraught about the prospect of nuclear war? But nobody was, right? Because we're starting to see that that's not really what's going on. It's like games of chess. It's wars of words, wars of propaganda. It's I remember Princess Diana said, I want to be the princess of people's hearts and minds, right? And they used to call her the Queen of Hearts in the press. They almost learnt from her that's what you need to do. That's what a fifth generation war is. Getting public support, not public condemnation, the way there was for the Vietnam War. So it was all done specifically, a specific way for a reason. He's right about that. But don't worry about how complicated and planned it was. That's what they're good at. That's what they're there for. But I found it interesting that Trump did show his human side when he got a bit testy with the press, going to the helicopter and said they have no effing idea what they're doing.
Well, we'll play it for you now.
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Ah, he's over it. I do like that.
Well, I go a step further. I think that this is what Jeffrey Sachs was referring to, and I think that this is what he posted the Jeffrey Sachs video for. This is the part of saving Israel for last. He is calling out the deep state on both sides of the fence, the same deep state that was Barack Obama and the policy of appeasement by sending over plane loads of cash to the mullahs who used that to punish the people of Iran. You use that to extend the nuclear program, and this is what will be seen in the interview. And at the same time, Israel pairing with the CIA of the old deep state regime to be able to advance said causes involving Syria, involving Iraq, etc. So Trump has said, like we talked about yesterday with those comments from those analysts, by saying that we will do this and then you are on your own. And for Israel to then send out the bombs, and I'll play the clip a minute on the ceasefire holding, to then try and bring Trump back in, that was the line in the sand. You've never heard a president of the United States right in front of the cameras say that he is disappointed with Israel even more than he is disappointed with Iran in these circumstances. This is the difference between Trump, who is not deep state, and even though I've got friends telling me that Trump's deep state, I'm like, God, it is just getting ridiculous. But we are in uncharted waters. And we were warned or told that in the whole Q movement, we are watching a movie. And there you are. We're agreeing that we are watching a movie. But the world is still yet to wake up. And yet at the same time, if we're watching a movie, Wall Street, US stocks have risen sharply. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ narrowly missing hitting record highs, if you can believe it. Meanwhile, oil prices sunk for a second straight day as the ceasefire started.
Not here.
And the crude futures slumped in volatile trading after Trump announced the ceasefire. So therefore, and of course, the dollars are strengthening, etc. And it now gives rise that even Jerome Powell is talking about interest rate cuts in the United States.
Where's Penny Wong? Where's Penny Wong, the warmonger? Why isn't she coming out going, yay, Trump did a great job. It's all over. Nobody wants war. No, she's not coming out, is she? Where's Penny Wong?
Well, Penny Wong agreed with Trump, and it turned out that it was right. And of course, Trump is now over at NATO, and we're hoping that they're doing some sort of agreement there. But Zelensky appeared in a photograph with those at NATO, and I don't understand that. He's not part of NATO. But one would expect that if Trump can put this thing to bed and it was organised in such a way that we can't be far off from an agreement and a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine and get this thing sorted once and for all. I will quickly show you a graphic. This popped up today from Mark Rutte, who is the head of NATO. This is a text message exchange. That was truly extraordinary and something no one else dared to do. It all makes us safer. You are flying into another big success in The Hague this evening, says Rudder. It was not easy, but we've got them all signed on to 5% contribution. So in other words, Trump is saying they've got to pay more and Rudder doing his work. Donald, you have driven us to a really, really important moment for America and Europe and the world. You will achieve something no American president in decades could get done. Europe is going to pay in a big way. Trump shared that text message there. So he's saying to NATO, if you are serious, you're going to get these people to pay up, and America's not going to do it. So Trump saying earlier, heading to NATO, where at worst it was a much calmer period than I just went through with Israel and Iran. I look forward to seeing all my good European friends and others. Hopefully much will be accomplished. And there is Marco Rubio headed to to The Hague with the president. Under his decisive leadership, we're driving historic change at NATO. So that will be the case there. So you would expect that these people will have to pay their way, and perhaps it may well be that if they don't get their way, the US pulls out of support in that, which is what many people have been alluding to, that Trump may even want to withdraw the United States from NATO, which would be something else entirely.
Well, I feel that NATO is the United States, but it's the other United States, the deep United States. So, yeah, that'd be interesting. But he's just got it on pause, right? The deep state's on pause. And not in our countries, because we're behind the 8 ball. We're still following all this ridiculous climate hoax and jabs. But the deep state is on pause in America, at least. And if the Democrats ever get back in, we're just going to go right off again into the deep state agenda. So it's very concerning.
Well, I would argue that that's the entire reason for the Trump presidency, is to remove the deep state, and it is done slowly and assuredly. And I tell you what, I would not want to be Barack Obama at this point. He is in the firing line at many situations. And I tell you what, if Obama was to go down or to be exposed in a way that this is where it's headed, there will be many, many people that will collapse in the house of cards trying to save themselves. And it may well be that we get to that end of the deep state. We thought we would see it with JFK files. We thought we would see it with the Epstein files. We thought we would see it about 9/11. We may yet have to see it all in real time. We thought we would see it with COVID. There is that many opportunities now. I maintain my confidence that perhaps my idealism for a rose-coloured glasses outlook on the world, but I can't see why you go this far just to let the deep state return in 3 years, 7 years, or 11 years' time. It makes absolutely no sense. It would be, what would be the point of doing it? Just to delay the inevitable. Just let Hillary win in 2016 and get it over and done with, for goodness sake. It's ridiculous.
But it was very cruel to bait and switch your MAGA followers by saying that this stuff was going to be exposed about Epstein and JFK and potentially 9/11, and then not deliver. So, you know, could this be why we had the little 12-day war? I don't know. But, you know, you can't promise it and then not deliver. This is just what every other politician does.
Indeed. And I still maintain that it can be delivered one way or another. We haven't heard from Kash Patel or Dan Bongino in some time, and unfortunately there's a process to it, and they are going to have to deliver. And there's no way that you get to this stage into it and not. What would be the point of it? So I don't think those days are quite over yet. I wanted to play you, just for the fun, I'll call it the elephant in the room clip for you. It is just a short clip. It's an AI version of what we just saw with Trump. I think it's just worthy of a little bit of a chuckle as we wind down for today.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
I do love those little baby ones. Slightly creepy, though, the whole baby-child connection. But, yeah. See, this is why I'm nervous about AI, Jason. Don't anybody make me a baby out there. Stop.
Well, yeah, there's a limit to everything. Look, I was going to play the clip on the ceasefire, but effectively it was announced that the ceasefire was holding, and that was Trump mentioned there that this particular one bomb was taken out just the same. So, look.
What about the money? What about the Iranian family's money? Because their bank accounts were drained of their savings. Are we going to ever hear if they're going to get those back? I mean, that was pretty awful.
Well, exactly, and so where are the mullahs on this one? If this is something that's happening with their country again, but I tell you what, not many people are confident that would be the case, and there has been many accusations that the money has been sent and used by the mullahs against the people rather than for the people. And one would hope, therefore, that if they really want regime change, which is what all indicators say, that they will be able to do it. And one can be confident that there has already been 5 uprisings since 2017. So this is a country country that has got more of the ability to do so, certainly much more than we have here in Australia, where we don't seem to get up off the mat for anything. So we all watch and see what happens around the world.
Oh, yeah. If you're watching on the couch, be more proactive, at least even with your speech while you still have it, because Julian Mungrant is coming for it. And you must teach your children, Australians, that questioning and logical thinking and looking up past looking something up on Grok is what you need to do to your young people, all right? Because they're being indoctrinated to just believe government curriculums, and most of it is a fairy tale.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. Well, I appreciate the support once again, and just a message there that there's about 5 days to go on our 20% off planned sale. The Daily Australian at substack.com is the place where you can subscribe and make that contribution to become one of the Daily Australians and supporting independent news as we look to expand and to build into the next level for the media here, and one day take on the mainstreamers at their own game and show them up for the lack of ability and providing their disservice to Australians as we provide service to all Australians to make this a better place, transparent, all of it exposed, and once again, people being held to account who want to take public office and try and tell us that they can't improve a situation that we know that they can for all of us.
Well, even if we made it onto mainstream television tomorrow, Jason, I certainly wouldn't be using that mainstream media news voice. Today in Melbourne. I mean, it's got to stop. It's like a throwback to the 1980s. But thanks for joining us again today. I think we'll probably do our TDA Unchained, our first little sort of off-leash chat for our subscribers on Substack. We'll do that this Friday, so you'll have that over the weekend. Hopefully we can bring some humour into it as well. Thank you for watching the Daily Australian with myself, Nicola Charles, and Jason Olbourne. We will do this all over again tomorrow.